Mayor Karen Bass. Now, the National Guards were deployed in LA, but they finally left. They ended up leaving. The National Guards ended up leaving, and this is Karen Bass on Face the Nation talking about ICE, the National Guards, and the migrant crisis she refuses to acknowledge.
Mayor Karen Bass. Good morning, Madam Mayor.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay. Glad you can hear me. We are looking at immigration issues 6 months in. You have had such a firsthand experience out in LA, given the deployment of U.S. troops. The president ordered the early release of nearly half of the National Guard from LA. Have they departed yet? What are the remaining ones doing?
Well, I believe they've departed, but they were never needed in the first place. And the remaining ones are doing what they were doing all along, which is essentially protecting 2 federal buildings, one of which in Westwood, where there never has been a big protest against the immigration raids. This is just such an incredible misuse of not only taxpayers' money, but of the young people who are in the National Guard, who've had to leave their families, their jobs, and their education for this deployment that is completely unnecessary. 4,000 troops, my understanding is most of their time has been spent in complete boredom, playing video games, and essentially waiting around because, again, 4,000 deployed and about 200 actually used.
The White House, of course, argues they deployed them because there was interference with the operations of law enforcement in carrying out some of the roundups. There are still enforcement actions by ICE taking place. You have talked about your objections, as you described them, to masked men, unmarked cars, drawing guns, snatching people off the street. You filed a Freedom of Information request to, quote, know who these masked men are. Why, though, is their identity important to you? Do you plan to prosecute them?
Well, no, let me just explain, because you have people who are literally walking down the street, sitting at bus stops, are individual vendors selling fruit on the street. These masked men pull up in unmarked cars and jump out of the cars with rifles and detain people. So for the average citizen, it looks like it's a violent kidnapping. So you should never have that. They don't identify themselves. And furthermore, to your previous guest, how on earth do they know that they're a threat when they're just chasing random people through parking lots, at Home Depots, going to car washes and rounding up people? It's difficult to get your car washed in Los Angeles now because most of the car washes, the employees won't come to work out of fear that a raid will take place.
So I want to get your thoughts on that, because last week we talked about how she's giving these illegals, money by a card, like a comp card, because they are afraid to go to work and it's a burden on their families. And this being funded by some of it by the taxpayers and private entities, private organizations. So now she's making a case for, she wants the identity of these National Guards and these ICE agents. They shouldn't have ever been here. They wasted their time. So what are your thoughts on her?
Find the primary law she's violating is United States Code annotated Title 8, Section 1324. It's a felony. Her official status does not give an excuse or defense to doing what she's doing. In fact, on sentencing, it compounds and aggravates the sentence. She's saying, in effect, because people violate the law, they should be free from worries about recrimination or consequences vesting for the violation of the law. She's falling into a trap which was illustrated by Orville Faubus in 1957, when, as governor of Arkansas, he declared he was not going to follow United States law relative to desegregation. That gave Ike Eisenhower every justification in the world for calling out 14,000 federal troops. As far as the troops sitting around doing nothing but playing video games right now, well, that's part of the whole military thing. After training very, very hard, when you are waiting to go into action, it is incredible boredom, occasionally punctuated by whatever comes from the, shall we say, adrenaline flow of going into action. We've got a tragic downside to that. Kent State, 1968. We've got many other expositions, including in Los Angeles, when Lyndon Baines Johnson called out about 12,000 troops and the California National Guard to deal with the uprising in the so-called Watts riots of 1965 in August. I was there and saw it. So this is nothing new. And she falls into the same trap as Governor Newsom, who is doing a lot of things that under the code sections involved would put them in a federal penitentiary, or since they are who they are, probably a minimum security facility at somebody's military or naval base or air base, a minimum security facility, but still it calls for time and the empanelment of grand juries. So anywhere there's a U.S. attorney that has jurisdiction over the subject matter, and since it impacts the whole United States, that leaves open a lot of areas, geographic areas. So this bunch might wind up cuffed up.
Well,
and by the way, it seems that the Trump administration's Justice Department is getting ready to take civil action against her.
Well, speaking, she mentioned about people are afraid they're going to be kidnapped. I want to play this here because now you have these illegals trying to stage their own kidnapping and blame it on ICE.
Now at 4, a South LA woman accused of staging a fake immigration kidnapping is now facing federal criminal charges. Good afternoon. This is the KTLA 5 News at 4. I'm John Fenolio. She allegedly claimed she was being held in a facility near the border, but the Department of Homeland Security says they found her at a mall in Bakersfield. KTLA's Sarah Welch joins us from South LA with the story. Sarah.
Hey, John, good afternoon. The Department of Homeland Security says Julie Calderon made this whole story up, that it was a hoax, that she blamed federal agents while stoking fear in the community. Back on June 30th, family and friends of Julie Calderon claimed she was kidnapped in this Jack in the Box parking lot off Alameda in South LA by federal agents or people working with them.
Ununiformed men and unmarked cars kidnapped Julie.
But the U.S. Attorney's Office says that was a lie. In its criminal complaint, they say these are photos of Calderon, a citizen of Mexico, on June 25th, parking her Toyota in the fast food parking lot, getting out and then walking across the street to get into another vehicle at this gas station and later driving away. Days went by and the family set up a GoFundMe to help find her, and they also filed a missing persons case with LAPD.
She was taken straight from here to the border and pressured to sign self-deportation paperwork.
Calderon claims she used another person's cell phone to say she was taken to a warehouse at an unknown location. But federal investigators say that was also a lie. And when we asked LAPD, all they would tell us is that they had closed the missing persons investigation. Federal investigators say Calderon was never in federal custody. And on July 4th, they located her with this woman at a parking lot in Bakersfield. Investigators say she stuck to her story. She'd been kidnapped. And these are photos investigators say Calderon created to make it appear as if she was in custody and being mistreated. But the U.S. Attorney's Office says she orchestrated the phony kidnapping to generate public sympathy and solicit donations. Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office released this statement saying dangerous rhetoric that ICE agents are kidnapping illegal immigrants is being recklessly peddled by politicians and echoed in the media to inflame the public and discredit our courageous federal agents. He went on to say, in terms of this case, all those involved will face the full consequences of their conduct under federal law. Now, Calderon has lived in L.A. for more than 20 years. She's charged with conspiracy and making false statements to federal agents. So far, no one else has been charged in this case, but the U.S. Attorney's Office says this case is ongoing. We did reach out to Calderon's family and the family attorney, but we haven't heard back yet.
They faking. Why they faking their own immigration kidnapping?
This is the whole 9 yards worth of the farce. This shows you how lacking in credibility that this whole side is. They have an agenda they're trying to push, and the agenda is furthered by the attempt to foster lawlessness and disrespect for public order. And they are achieving it. Los Angeles has got some problems right now, and when it gets to a certain point, all of these people are going to get busted for inciting riots, which will make me laugh. Even certain ones that belong in Congress, they're only immune going to and from Congress, and while Congress is in session, but not otherwise, and they're only immune for things they say if the statements occur during a congressional session or on the floor of one house or another, the House or the Senate. So, well, chamber rather than house. So they ought to be interesting and amusing when they get it. And I'm waiting. I think they're probably just putting together cases right now.
Well, a hot mess.
Sure.
So,
And also there is a crime called making a false statement to a federal agency or agent.
yeah, and I heard that she started a GoFundMe. Somebody in the chat put that. So,
That's another thing. And since she used the net, that becomes wire fraud, which becomes a federal crime. So it ought to be interesting.